This is one of those movies where it's really hard to tell the story without ruining all the big twists in the story. But yeah, there's a piece of music dating back to 1697 that finds its way to modern Salem into this one DJ and starts unlocking this other world that she's connected to somehow that is bad news, shall we say. We had gone to Massachusetts for a wedding. Some of our friends were getting married. And, you know, we're at the hotel and just downtime with nothing to do. So I was just poking around the gift store of the hotel and found this book called like Hunting Witches or something, this little skinny book. And I just got it to read because I had nothing else to do. And that's what kicked it off. I mean, I grew up in Massachusetts, so the Salem witch trials was like one of those things where, like, if your school went on a class trip, you'd go to Salem and they would have the witch trial reenactments, and they had the witch museum, and you'd kind of do the whole thing. So I always knew about this stuff. And as far as the props, yeah, they weren't really props replicating stuff from the Salem witch trials, but more like the European witch trials. Like, there's like a spiked chair and an iron mask, and all these things are totally accurate. We pulled it all from, you know, pictures of actual devices that were created for torturing witch confessions out of people. But I guess, you know, if someone sticks you into a spiky chair, you'll cough it up.
Anyone care for a fresh pot of tea?
Lovely, darling.
I didn't want to make I did the research, but then I almost through doing the research knew that I wanted to vary from reality, because the true story of the Salem witch trials is basically, you know, 20-something people were put to death, accused as witches, and obviously they weren't. And that story's been told in, you know, like PBS documentaries and, you know, that type of movies, so I didn't want to do that. So, but I used that as a backdrop where, okay, there's 20-something innocent people, but then I thought it's more interesting to think, well, maybe there was secretly 6 other people were put to death who were witches. So there was a big hysteria about the innocent people, but there were actual guilty people, and that's what really I dealt with.
And I have. Well, let's be sensible about this. Who knows? We might be useful to each other.
Forevermore, our eyes will burn with sights of the tormented.
Well, the Halloween movies were very difficult because by the nature of it being a pre-existing franchise type thing, you know, everybody feels like they know what will make it work. Everybody has an opinion, everybody has an idea, everybody's like, can't be this, has to be that. And, you know, no one's ever on the same page, so you're constantly getting bombarded. And I didn't contractually have final cut on those movies, so you're always arguing about everything. And, you know, not saying that I'm always right or they're always wrong, but it just, you have to have, it's like anything. Only one person can drive the boat. You know, you can't have 10 people, go this way, go that way. That's just going to capsize the boat. And that's what starts happening sometimes on movies, because there's just so many cooks in the kitchen, and you're fighting to get a point across so you don't go see the movie and go, what a big mess. And on this movie, you know, because it was a low-budget movie, part of my deal was like, they'll give me, you know, if I do the movie for this budget, I can have 100% control over everything all the time. And it just, you know, especially on a low budget, you have to have that, because you don't have time to not be shooting because you're arguing about something stupid. And that's what would happen a lot in those other films. I feel like we're not getting anything done because we're arguing about minutia that's so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But that's, you know, you go to a restaurant and have 20 people and say, what are we all going to order, and how long will that frickin' take, you know? Think of that with a movie. Someone came to me not knowing I was a hockey fan and pitched this idea of doing a movie called The Broad Street Bullies, which is a true story of the Philadelphia Flyers, which I thought was great. I mean, because the story is very crazy. I mean, everybody knows that movie Slapshot, which is essentially like the comedic watered-down version of the real story, because the Flyers were, you know, this new team when they started back then, and they were basically getting their asses kicked by the more experienced teams that were, you know, had been around for a while, like the Rangers or the Bruins. And the guys who owned the team were like, we are done being kicked around. We are going to build the toughest, meanest, nastiest hockey team anyone's ever seen. And they really set about purposefully doing that. And then they got a coach who just was known as Freddie the Fog, because he was just weird. He would disappear. He wouldn't talk to the team. He would just write cryptic messages on a blackboard to communicate with the team. And they had this bizarre, it reads like total fiction. And they basically terrorized their way through the NHL in the 70s and won the championship twice, almost 3 times in a row. And there was all kinds of things called the Philly flu, where players would suddenly pretend to be sick because they didn't want to have to play against these guys. And that was back in the day where, you'd have 20 guys on the ice fighting at the same time, and the referees couldn't stop it, so police would literally come on the ice and break up the fights. Or the players would go into the stands and fight with the audience, with the spectators, and you'd have a brawl in the seats. It was just madness. I mean, that would never happen now. Never happen now. I mean, in fact, because of them, it doesn't happen. I mean, they said that the rule book for hockey went from this thick to this thick just based on these guys alone, because they did stuff no one ever even conceived of. But I say it's like the Dirty Dozen meets Boogie Nights on ice, because it takes place in the 70s. All the guys look like porn stars, and they're just maniacs.